So my name is Meleko. I'm the director of the graduate program in painting, um, and I'm a painter myself. And I'll just kind of introduce very briefly the some people from the painting community. So we have Maria, Alex, and Matt, who are our core faculty, who will also join us and also answer some of your questions during the Q&A. Alex and Maria will come in about 15 minutes to talk more about the print program and the print shop. And we're also very lucky to be joined by our student reps, Haejin, Hafsa, I think Lau and Mike are here as well. So they will also speak towards the end about the experience. They're in the studios and they can show you a bit about their work, and they will also stay behind during the Q&A. So you can ask them any kind of questions you might have about the program. So I will start my screen share and I will just give an overview of the program, the structure of it, the curriculum, a couple of things to know, and then, we can't obviously get through everything all at once. So if there's anything that we don't address, please feel free to ask us any questions you might have about the curriculum, faculty, resources, facilities, during Q&A. So this is to say we can't address everything, but please, ask us questions. So I will begin. Hopefully it is going. Yes. So again, my name is Meleko. I teach in the graduate program and also the undergrad program. All of our faculty, full-time faculty, teach courses in the undergrad and the graduate program. And really our approach to painting is not so much focused on trying to move this thing so I can see what I need to see. Apparently I can't. So basically, we do not focus on the notion that painting is only situated within oil paint or acrylic paint on some kind of surface, but really we come to painting as a discursive system, right? What are the protocols or the rules or the framework under which we understand the concept, the history, and the kind of ideological structures around painting? And we also try to situate that within a global and broader historical aesthetic context, right? To kind of look beyond the Eurocentric Western notion of what counts as painting or what counts as an aesthetic object or an aesthetic experience. So we also encourage all of our students to be critical of these frameworks, their histories, the ideological baggage, and really to kind of figure out how to interrogate all of the things that they want to kind of all the questions they want to pose. So I'll show a couple of images where you see a lot of times, there isn't like a canvas that's painted, right? So these are previous work that have been shown in the pit. And we really try to place emphasis on analyzing the relationships between form and content, practice and theory, research and embodied experiences, as well as language and its effects. And we really work diligently, at least we try, to support the ways in which artists contextualize their practice, right? So that we can understand what questions they have, how they're approaching research, and what kind of agenda they have with their practice. And really to kind of create a space for the intervention within the discourse. So again, as you see, a lot of our students are interested in really traveling the concept of painting, and within the format of critiques, town halls, and studio visits, we try to kind of get to an intentional process of decision making where we have a free exchange of ideas, and that's what we really try to flourish under, to not really stick to one set of what is seen as aesthetically pleasing or what is critical, what is not critical. We try to even trouble the notion of what is criticality and how does that develop and why. And as much as that is also reflected within our students, it's also reflected in our faculty. We have a whole host of faculty with different experiences with different practices from some that are invested in abstraction, figuration, collage, printmaking, animation, public art. So it really runs the gamut of how we approach painting, right? So we're not programmatic about our notion of what painting is. And we also have, that's also reflected in the critics that we bring into the program, and these are mainly part-time faculty. So we try to have a good mix of practitioners, from curators, writers. So as you can see here, we have people like Kristen Heilman, Chris Liu, Curry, and I'm trying to see who else is a curator here. Those are curators at museums. We also have writers. Leslie is a writer, Cassandra, Amanda, Palma. So we have a good range of people who have studio practices, and also people who have writing practices, and also curatorial practitioners as well. So we try to get a range of people to get into the studios and talk to our students about how they can move their practice forward. And this is a list that also develops through different conversations with students who recommend people and say, hey, there's this artist, there's this writer, these are the people who we think we want to be in dialogue with. So this also gives us flexibility to respond to student interest. And as Taryn was saying, students need 60 units to earn the MFA, and a lot of those units are taken within our area, and I'll kind of get to that the breakdown. So because Taryn already went through these, I'll talk more about the core credits and the electives in a second. So how the curriculum looks, I'll focus on 4 major parts, which are the individual criticism, which are the studio visits, the group critique, and that has different scales from large to the medium, as well as the electives. So those are school-wide and painting, printmaking specific electives, and then also touch on the thesis, which is also a big area. But when you do come in, this is how a fall semester would look like. The colloquium is a community gathering event. This year we had Cecilia Vicuña, we had Davida Fernandez Baca, and we also had Stephanie Jameson, and they spoke to us about the notion of experimentation, which is an amazing thing to kind of be part of, because they all have different takes of that. And this is in conjunction to also, now I'm forgetting the word, it'll come back to me, the school-wide thing, I forgot.
Convocation.
Convocation, thanks, Matt. So this is in addition to the convocation, which we can address later. So round trip is also a required course. It's a 3-credit course that is co-taught. This year's co-taught by Matt and Amanda, and that is a hybrid of seminars and also group critiques. There's also, again, individual studio visits that are done. And then we have the PIT Crit, and that's for second years. And I'll talk a bit about that in a second. And we also have final reviews towards the end of the semester where second years present their work in front of all the full-time faculty, 2 co-critics, and the whole cohort of students. So this kind of a general sense of how a fall semester looks like, really within the department, but then don't forget that you have to take other electives. And I'll just kind of share different. So this is from Khalif's group critique this semester, and run a similar structure would be the spring, where the first years have their PIT crit, and again I'll get to that on a group crit section. The thesis is a 2-semester class, so it meets 6 times in the fall and 6 times in the spring. and it's also co-taught by full-time faculty who also invites a guest critic. And as I was saying, so this year is taught by Sophie and Kari. And Kari is a curator at MoMA PS1, and they work together to create the curriculum and also to work with students about the installation, the content of the show. They do studio visits. There's a publication that's involved, and there's also a thesis review during the thesis exhibition, and then there's also a walkthrough, and this also has its own budget. And again, I'll touch on that later. And I'll kind of go to the individual criticism. So the group critique and the studio visits are central to the program. So each student gets sign-ups every week to have studio visits with both core faculty and critics. And this counts for 6 credits each semester. Out of the, usually we ask students to take 15 credits per semester for 4 semesters to get to that 60. But 60 credits goes towards these, and these are 45 one-on-one studio visits. These could be with core faculty, core critics, also visiting artists. We have a visiting artist program that is run by students, and those students are elected by the cohort. And we have 4 visiting artists per semester, and those usually come on Friday. They do studio visits, and then they do a lecture, and they also attend a lunch with a good amount of our students. So we kind of aim towards having 1 to 3 studio visits per week on average. This is again, this is a class. It's not something that is extracurricular. Is equally important for feedback is a group critique, and there are pretty much 2 kind of scales for that. There's the large one, which is the PIT crit. That is attended by all the students in that class. So in the fall is the second years, in the spring is the first years. It's co-taught by 2 faculty, and there's always a guest faculty as a third faculty. So in each group critique, there are 3 faculty who will help to facilitate the conversation. And this semester is taught by Miguel and Byron. And what it is, it's a 3-hour class. Each week, 2 students present for an hour and a half. Present meaning they don't sit there. They basically install their work in the space, and then they're given feedback. And the work is up for about a week. And with that, they can have other kinds of conversations with people outside of painting to have more conversations. The other one is a smaller group critique, and that happens with the core faculty and the core critics. So that is a group of 3 to 4 students each semester. So, each student has 3 meetings with their core faculty and 3 meetings with their critic. So 2 meetings are individual, one-on-one, and then 1 meeting out of those 3 is a group critique. So the students put up their work and they talk about the work in that smaller group. So, and just to kind of give you a sense of the pit crit, it's a sizable space, and each summer it is kind of redone because it goes through a lot of abuse. But it is a good space to install work. And we also have another space on the second floor, C220, that is also an exhibition, not an exhibition, a space for presenting work. And I'll just kind of mention briefly, we do have some other resources in the painting building. We have the printmaking studio, which Alex and Maria will say something about soon. We also have the fabric lab, which has 3, 4, and 8 harness looms, and this is it has been a big point of interest. And this summer, we spent a good amount of time finding looms and buying them and situating them within the building. We also have a finishing shop where students can do sanding and so forth. There's also a spray booth, which is, it's a good space to spray aerosol material. And we also have a digital print lab. And as of the last couple of weeks, we have a new animation station, which was spearheaded by one of the student reps, Lau, who can maybe say something about it. But I'm really happy that is a new development, because Lau saw the need to have an animation station within the building, and the school was very willing, and that happened in the space of a week. So that happened as well. So just a kind of couple of images of the spaces. So we highly encourage students to take classes outside of the department, because it's a research institute, and a lot of our students take classes in theater, a lot of performance classes, film classes, architecture, African American studies, and so forth. So we really encourage people to take classes outside, but as of recently, all students are required to take one class outside of the School of Art. So it used to be two, but now it is one class, which again is to allow students to look beyond the School of Art offerings. And I'll just kind of mention one or two electives. So we also offer electives in our department. So for example, the Pedagogy, Power and Politics, that course is offered by Miranda Samuels. And that really looks at kind of global and historical approaches to the notion of knowledge production and learning, and what counts as art, and how aesthetic frameworks are kind of thought about and historicized. Same with maybe mention Aesthetics of Difference, which is going to be taught by Jennifer Pranolo, who will talk about the notion of, say, identity. And the jumping off point comes from Stuart Hall, who thinks about identity both as an aesthetic, within the aesthetic field, but also within the field of representation. So that is both a historical and a theoretical course. So throughout the year, we kind of speak to our students, speak to faculty, and we try to adjust the curriculum to see what electives might make sense. And the same with, say, materials exploration, which there's been a lot of interest in finding out and examining and experimenting more with materials and so forth. I think my lights are going out now. I think that's probably a sign that I should wrap up. The thesis class again meets 6 times a semester in the fall and the spring, and we're really happy that we're able to offer this as something where a guest curator can come and really talk to the mechanics of mounting an exhibition, how to do it, and kind of best practices, and also how to trouble the conventions of the exhibition. I'm trying to kind of see what else I might have missed with that, because I've already gone through some of those. So the students work closely with the co-teachers, and they also work through, for example, the walkthrough. They invite one person to come and have a conversation with the students about the exhibition, and that runs the gamut from, last semester we had, last year I think we had like Jane Panetta came, and I think Adrian Edwards was one of the people who came for the walkthrough, and that is something that is negotiated between the students and the faculty who teach the class. There are also summer exhibitions, and which happen off campus, and these we have no links to. So this is absolutely student initiated, and I believe this past summer, this thesis exhibition, well, not thesis, the summer exhibitions happened at Periton Gallery in New York. They had another offshoot exhibition that is being staged in Beijing, and this is run by students. They contact spaces and start to negotiate how to go about mounting another show in a different space. So, and we do try to have fun. We invite a lot of people who come. This is from last year where we had Siddhartha Mehta, we had Smooth, we had, I'm trying to see who else came as guest critics. I'm having trouble seeing people, but we have co-critics. I see Anoka and Byron and Rochelle. So all of the faculty come, and we spend 40 to 45 minutes giving feedback through the thesis exhibition. So I think I'm going to end there because I don't want to go too long. I want to leave space for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex, and I think Maria will also step in to talk about the print shop.
Terrific. Thanks, Meleko. And thanks, everyone, for being here. My name is Alex Valentine. I'm a senior critic in the department, and I'm the print shop coordinator. So most things that have to do with the print shop facility and working within it involves me, although we have many faculty that also teach through that shop and throughout the school. So the print shop facility is a full fine arts printmaking facility with lithography, intaglio, relief, screen printing. We also have some facilities and equipment dedicated to publishing and book forms. So some book arts, we have a risograph there. And then, of course, also very popular with painters, monoprinting and monotyping as well. We endeavor to provide as many materials to learn from as possible. So all inks, paper, and most matrices are provided. And graduate students, so the facility is located in the 353 Crown building on the basement level, and in many ways is an extension or possible extension for graduate students and artists studio spaces. So at the beginning of each year, the artists in the program take an orientation with me and fill out a basic waiver form and are granted 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access to the space. In addition to that access is also support from myself, other faculty, and also a monitor student work program. Often those monitors have some background in printmaking or an emphasis within their own practices and are a great resource, peer resource for the artists in the program to engage with the shop and learn more about ways in which the print shop can kind of connect to their own practices. And that's really where the emphasis is for me, trying to connect this space and histories of printmaking to your own individual practices, and then also considering ways in which the print shop is a site of exchange and potential collaboration. So it's a very well-equipped and nice space that allows for a lot of gathering together and working alongside each other and with each other. So we have 2 French tool etching presses, a litho press, also another Charles brand etching press, inkjet printer for film production, some equipment for photo processes. We have a publication area that I mentioned. That's often a site in which a lot of artists within our program also engage with graphic design students. I also teach a publishing class on the undergraduate level. We have an intaglio area, including an aquatint box and acid room, and then also a large light exposure unit for screen printing and other photo processes. And this is my background. I'm not in the space right now, but I spend a lot of time there. These are 2 of our larger etching presses, and beyond that is the etching area. So within that space, there's quite a bit of instruction available. Myself and Maria, who's going to talk in a moment about her experiences teaching in the shop, we co-teach a class, a seminar, graduate level seminar called the Projections of Print, which in many ways serves as a kind of primer for artists entering the program to get them up to speed within the shop. We do a lot of visits to print shops and publishers outside of the the program, and then including Two Palms Press in New York. We've recently completed a visit to Milestone Graphics in New Haven. We invite lots of visiting printmakers and artists, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. There's undergraduate courses that graduate students are encouraged to take if they want to focus more on a specific kind of 15-week intensive exploration of printmaking, including intro to print, and then also medium-specific classes like screen printing, which I teach in the fall. We have visiting artist lectures and demonstrations. There's also a program called the Print Catalyst Program, which annually invites an artist to work with a collaborative printmaker in the shop to produce an editioned artwork that is often collected by the Yale University Art Gallery. So it also involves kind of curatorial involvement from the museum here, and involves graduate students being able to observe and also kind of engage with that artist and printmaker as they develop a project. This is a slide from this semester with Sarika Sugla, who's a papermaking technician and artist. She works at Two Palms Press, and she was leading a day-long workshop on papermaking and pulp painting. This is in the Intaglio area, where a graduate student named Opal Deruvo is leading a group of, I think this was during orientation actually, on monoprinting. And this is a graduate seminar visit to Milestone Graphics in New Haven, where that shop has been publishing and producing artwork, printed artwork, for the last almost 50 years. And this is a collections visit to the Haas Arts Library Special Collection. So really trying to engage in primary examples of printed artwork, bringing students and artists into the collections and engaging with curatorial and library staff. Maria, do you want to say anything about teaching in those spaces or teaching in the print shop?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Maria de Los Angeles, and sorry about that. I've been sitting here so long, I forgot. And I am the assistant director of the painting and printmaking program, and I'm also a full-time faculty. So I've taught introduction to printmaking. In the courses, you always have graduate students, professional students, and undergrads. And we go over various types of techniques and mediums, such as like first-time monotype, etching, relief. And they're really great courses as well. In addition to the class that I co-teach with Alex, I often will invite visiting artists. Last year, we invited Marie Lorenz, who taught a type object printing class, and then recently we brought in Royce Young Wolf, who is the Native American art curator, Native American, leading the whole innovation with the Native American exhibition and curatorial at the Peabody Museum and the UAG. And she taught a cyanotype workshop actually just this week. I think maybe we can also add that the print shop is like one big family. People go in there at all hours and work. It's really a really fun place within the building. And you have a mixture of undergrad, grad, and visiting artists always making work and having conversations. Students often will lead initiatives in like how to do lithography or various areas of expertise between the programs. And here's a photo from earlier this week outside. And I guess I can speak that in addition to the cyanotype, Royce also spoke about what does it mean to have your work collected by museums and how to do other things and understand the work beyond the studio. So you get a lot of insight from the various experts. Go ahead, Alex.
That was great. Yeah, thank you. This is Marie Watt visiting as part of the Print Catalyst program that I had mentioned earlier. And yeah, I think we take as expansive an approach to teaching and encouraging engagements in the print shop as as possible by bringing in lots of guests, by thinking about print as a medium that goes beyond its associations with reproduction, and think a lot about the physical maneuvers of printmaking, what it means to put pressure to something, what it means to use a stencil and something that filters a material. And then, like Maria was mentioning, we try to really have a fun environment that is accessible and encouraging, and allows for making work within that space, and helping others do the same. So I think I'm at my 10 minutes, and yeah, thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Yes, so now we'll move on to Lau, Mike, Hafsa, and Haejin. So I don't think I have images, so I should stop my screen share.
Hi everyone. My name is Laura. I am a second year painting and printmaking student. I came in with a painting background, but I have been largely interdisciplinary in my practice. I'm a printmaker, I make sculptures, and I've been utilizing video as a way to really kind of combine all of these mediums, and as a way to create what I refer to as internal landscapes that explore memory and identity. So these are some of the works that I applied with. And when I first got here, I was exploring different materialities with paper mache, and collage for me has been a way to create like a compositional logic in the way that I think about my work, and the way that it expands into different mediums. It allows me to talk about personal histories, popular culture, and different types of archives that don't follow a hierarchy. And while I've been here, because of the size of the studios, I've been able to make much larger scale work. This is part of my first pit crit during my first year. And the large scale printing has allowed me to bring the collage into the soft sculpture. I've also been creating paintings on silk that kind of are more sculptural. And this is one of the videos that I've made in my first year that kind of really brings in all of the sculptures, paintings, miniatures that I've been creating. I use a video game software to compose these videos. And again, it allows me to explore like my familial archive, expand notions of scale, and create landscapes that talk about like construction of cultural and national identities. And with that research, I was awarded the Dean's Travel Grant this summer. So I went back to Colombia, and I'm really interested in the Andean miniature practices. So I went to different sites like the Gold Museum, and I was researching specific objects that for me were portals of Colombia when I was growing up in the US. I really immersed myself in the architecture and the landscape, and I worked with two different artists while I was there. And these are some recent works that were really inspired by my travels, thinking about modularity and color and the symbols that have been part of that cultural language, and really thinking about scale. I think, like I said, the size of the studio has really allowed me to expand on that. This is also another recent work that I showed during my pit, and it incorporates some of the ceramic objects that I made while I was in Colombia with Cecilia Vargas Munoz, and really thinking about making works that tether the diasporic body to a landscape. And this is a painting on chiffon, so really thinking about painting differently. These are some videos from my studio. I've been setting up different video installations for my studio visits. So kind of creating different screens and allowing the videos to bleed as I'm considering installation for thesis. This is another soft sculpture ceramic installation that I had for the second year show. And as we mentioned, like being an academic university has provided me with a lot of resources in my research. These are some books that have been really formative for me that I have in my studio, that talk about like the different cultural practices that I'm interested in. I also wanted to mention some of the classes that I've taken while being here. Currently taking a scale class in art history that's been really informative. Remapping dance, which is kind of creating different ethnographies relating to dance, and that's in dance and performance studies. And I also took feminism and knowledge in Latin America class. That's part of the Latin American studies. So yeah, feeling very fortunate for all the resources I have available to me here. And that's it.
All right. So I'm sharing a bunch of images, first the things that I applied with, and then the work that I made here. I feel like it's helpful, like something that I would have wanted to see before I applied. I was thinking a lot about the construction of images before coming here. I have a background in education. I'm quite a bit of a ways out of undergrad. I finished my undergrad about 10 years ago, did a lot of different things, but I was working as a high school teacher. And I was making abstract paintings and thinking a lot about like how the images could be constructed and broken down, and thinking about being very clear about the process by which the thing was made. And I got really into researching about the history of like abstract painting and the relationships that it had to modernism, to development of like the first kindergarten curriculums. There's all sorts of interesting historical ties between the two. And yeah, and then so this is like stuff that I applied with. I also wanted to include a couple of images of like stuff that I came in to the interview with. So I have like, let's see. So if you do get an interview, you show like a couple of select works and you show studies. So this is like something that was like in progress that I then ended up showing. And I think it's just really important to be to really investigate and think about what questions you have in your practice, why it is that you make work, and what sort of things are important to you in your work. I came in really having a strong desire to try to expand my painting practice and understand why it is that I made images, and also understand the process that sort of leads me to produce a painting. So this is some stuff that I was doing first semester. I started working with a lot of like photographic images, trying to break them down and understand my process in relation to these photographic images. And there are a lot of resources here that are like really helpful in terms of expanding your practice. Like I've been working with CCAM, taking a class called The Mechanical Eye that has a lot to do with like LiDAR and 3D scanning, 3D printing. I started incorporating a lot of printing technologies into my work, a lot of casting. I took a class in the architecture department called Architectural Drawing in the Expanded Field, where we also talked a lot about some of these things. And yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Lau.
Hafsa?
Hi, my name is Hafsa Nouman. I am from Lahore, Pakistan. I finished my undergrad last year in 2022, and I wasn't really sure if I would get into Yale, but I applied anyways at the very last minute, and I'm here, so I would really encourage everyone to apply. These are the few images that I applied which were part of my portfolio. These are acrylic and emulsion on canvas, and I was exploring the idea. I was exploring collective memory and personal memory through family photographs and from an archaeological perspective. And while exploring that, I was allowing chance to take precedence in developing my work and developing the end visual. And the reason why I wanted to apply to Yale was mainly for its collections, because I wanted to research the wrought iron grill patterns and figure out where they're coming from and what those patterns have a history of their own, and what those histories are being stripped off. And these patterns are just used as ornamentation and mass produced and put around the city without everyone knowing about their historical context. This is my studio. I have been very lucky that I got a good lottery number, and I was able to choose my studio space early on compared to the rest of the members of my cohort. The work on my left side was something that I put up in the first year show, which you can see in this stairway leading down on the right side. And we also had I was very fortunate to have Tracy Emmons come to my studio space, and I chose the studio mainly because of the window and the light which was coming in. So I try to make sure that I'm always present in my studio, especially during the afternoons, because that golden hour really allows my white surfaces and allows me to understand my space better, space within my work. And this is my studio at the moment. It's very messy. I just had my round trip on Tuesday. I think I'm still on that round trip high. I'm really excited to have everyone talk about my work. And yeah, and so this is while coming to Yale, I saw Rothko's works for the first time ever. I also got to see Samuel Yellen's work, and I think I started crying. It was quite surreal seeing all of those works, and I feel very fortunate to be in this, being so close to the UAG, and to able to just every day go and see Rothko, see Cy Twombly, see all of these amazing artists that I have always been. I grew up being taught, and then now finally have access to look at and understand their surfaces. I think a lot of my practice is rooted in a lot of research, and this is me at the Beinecke understanding the different surfaces and the way that paper can be used to create spaces within a booklet form, and how books are binded and what type of papers are used. This is me at Haas Gallery. I was looking at, again, ways of binding a book and different papers being used, and how I can make my own non-binded book. And yeah, I'm in the process of researching that. That's it. Yeah, I think I wanted to keep it brief and short. Thank you.
Thank you, Hafsa.
Thanks.
Haejin?
Hi guys. That was really inspiring to hear second year and first years speak. My name is Haejin, and I'm a first year student. I'm going to show some of my portfolio work I submitted. I have a background in illustration, and I was also working as a graphic designer. So I've been working with watercolor on paper for a long time in my work, and with my illustration background, stories still really drive me to create images and characters, and colors and dreams and visions really still move me forward to every day and wake up and want to make images. But I'm also interested in microviolence and violence. And I think at Yale, I'm trying to understand why I'm interested in that. For my portfolio, I also wanted to show my interest in mediums and how I wanted to have a exploration within paper and also fabric and sculptures. So I tried my portfolio to be like diverse, not just fixated on just watercolor on paper. This was my house. I created all my portfolio in my bedroom and a small desk. And I also took photos in my bedroom. So I like really like tried to like work within the space I had to submit my application. And now I have this beautiful studio. I picked this studio spot because of the trees and windows. And now I like cover them up all with my drawings and bookshelves with books, and just it's kind of messy, so I did not include the photos. This is the new work I created. The first work, I still wanted to work with some material that I'm familiar with. So I did paper work, flat paper work, and after that, I had like one studio visit that like sort of like really like inspired me to move beyond just flat paper. So I started making sculptural work with paper and paper installations. And these are what I installed on my first year shows. And then for 2 weeks after that, I had a round trip, which is a first year student critique with Keegan and Amanda. So I installed this piece, which I really wanted to challenge myself to be off the wall with the paper, and also wanted to explore watercolor on paper as a different way of seeing like paper floating on water. So that's what really it was a great experience. Also, in the classes, I feel really comfortable exploring different ideas and not just like big finished pieces. And I feel like my cohort and faculty are very interested and like encouraging in workshopping with me these ideas as well. My other classes, I am really fortunate to take East Asian Women's Art History class. Like in this class, I like sometimes feel like I should have known this a long time ago, but it's just really inspiring to like learn this in an institution where there's like galleries and art historians and artists. So it really inspires me. Also, I'm taking printmaking class with Alex and Maria. These photos don't really show all the things that we do, but it's really when we made paper pulp and guest lectures come in, I feel really inspired to try different mediums within paper. I'm also taking public art class for my critical practice. So we go around the Yale campus and look at different public art and what it means. And I'm also taking auditing, pedagogy, politics and power class with Miranda. And every day I'm reading something that is really inspiring and new. And it's really wonderful experience. I'm also doing the open drawing session, which I'm also trying to incorporate my interest in drawing and installation and environment and character into these drawing sessions. I'm going to end with this tree because this is what it looks like right now in my house. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone. And if you didn't get a question answered, you are welcome to email us at art.admissions@yale.edu. And we look forward to reviewing your applications.